All right, so I just got done reading Tails Gets Trolled, Chapter 2 by Laserbot. Um, so picking up from where we left off, there's definitely this feeling that they took some time to kind of build up the story from where they left off. I know I've read that Laserbot really didn't have the intention of having this become an ongoing series, at least not initially, but based on the response, decided to continue going about his business. Now, from what I can tell from chapter two, we sort of have the sense of genre really finding its footing. Obviously, we have influence from broadly speaking the shonen genre. There's definitely some Dragon Ball isms, especially particularly in the fight scenes and kind of the dialogue in the fight scenes. Those kind of slightly woeful asides, "You bastard," that kind of thing. Um, we also see, I'd say, kind of action thriller genre. I noticed notes perhaps of Soi Chang's accident, that kind of um, sort of a post 9/11 kind of terrorist conscious uh, freedom fighters getting a gang together, Seven Samurai, all of these things kind of at play, perhaps the heist genre as well, in that they are putting together a plan to kind of deal with the trolls once and for all. We've seen the cast of characters increase exponentially in chapter two. Uh, we have the addition of Bugs Bunny. Elmer Fudd shows up. Wile E. Coyote. I noticed a funny aside was that it's been established that at some point Shadow, maybe alongside some of his other pals, maybe with Mario and Luigi, um, captured the Roadrunner and killed him and gave him to Wile E. Coyote to eat. So it is called in media res. Some of these we're in the midst of a cast of characters that have these relationships that take place before the story. And what you do here is you kind of create these ellipses or these questions for the reader to kind of continue to keep an eye out for when these character moments happening and making connections. Strong storytelling from Laserbot, no doubt. Um, the main troll character, who I believe hasn't actually had a name introduced, but he's got this sort of warped tour aesthetic, kind of a very 2000s type of emo, the type that you would see at a Hot Topic or such, and has been kind of making a comeback in the sort of you know, aftershock of Drain Gang's popularity. But nonetheless, it's the epitome of what someone thinks is cool. And I actually don't think it's what Laserbot thinks is cool. I think it's what maybe the girls that Laserbot likes thinks is cool with this character's aesthetic and kind of uh, um, f the world aloofness. I wish that I could give you a name for this character, but so far it hasn't been established. But he's kind of the cool guy troll. He's not the leader of the trolls, but he's the one that's kind of the interlocutor between um, Shadow's ragtag crew of, I would say, freedom fighters of sorts. Not to explicitly reference the freedom fighters from the Archie Sonic comics, but I certainly think that might be in the at least unconscious mind of Laserbot when he's putting together this sort of fan fictional crossover event. We see Tails' character develop a little more in chapter two. Tails is not as much of a in the vernacular of Laserbot a pussy as one might have thought based on chapter one, but ends up going to stand up for himself. He does get his ass handed to him. There is a line in which Tails will act on his own accord and not simply seek the help and guidance from Sonic and Shadow and Knuckles and co. There's a lot of great jokes in this one, particularly Laserbots seems to have an affinity for making humor out of the Looney Tunes characters that they have used in this series. Bugs Bunny, who's a member of this ragtag team that they put together to deal with the trolls effectively, is labeled as the gay one. Now, at once, this is just kind of crass. I think what I called bromophobic in chapter one kind of humor. But secondly, it's very conscious of the source material. Bugs Bunny frequently cross dresses in the Looney Tunes cartoons as a means of perhaps pranking or even as a means of expressing his truthful gender identity or sexual orientation or what have you. Now, uh, it's made light, but the fact that he comes right out and says it like that as a means of how to deal with trolls. So there's a very bunch of characters are introduced and they explain how they deal with trolls. One just says, "I always agree with them." I think that's a character I think the character's from Final Fantasy. It's not one I recognize, but whatever. Bugs Bunny says I dress up like a girl and I mess with them. And I thought the way that that was written, in the kind of broken MSN Messenger vernacular of Laserbot, is pretty funny. One of them just a guy with no ears. It's a good kind of irreverent joke. He can't hear the trolls because he has no ears. That's pretty funny. And yeah, and just some others. And then I noticed probably the most interesting thing on this. There was a sudden increase in art quality on page 5. Uh, I think that the first 4 pages might have been left over from chapter 1, and chapter 5 is where it picks back up. Whatever. Another interesting thing I noticed was um, this kind of like it feels like there's I don't know how to put it, but I love it when you can see the strings. And what Tails Get Strolled does when you can see the strings is and what mean by see the strings is you can kind of see where they're kind of course correcting or retconning, or where the formal issues that they have using MS Paint and such are apparent to the reader. Um, where I guess this was something that bothered them, but they built a fortress underground for the team to meet up, the anti-trolls ragtag crew. I think they called themselves the Troll Slayers, if I'm not mistaken. Where the Troll Slayers team up. And the Hulk is one of the members of this group, the Incredible Hulk of Marvel Comics fame. Um, yeah, there's a throwaway line before the next page that just says, due to his size, Hulk will stay outside and we'll let him in on it later. And it made me wonder, were they worried about the like interior logic of the size of this hole and Hulk not being so big and not being able to fit into it? And it made me wonder, do they know that Hulk is also Bruce Banner and can turn into a human? But in Tales Gets Trolled, the rules are out. You know, he could not turn into Bruce Banner. We'll see. Chapter 3. Um, but pointing this out before going about the rest of the scene. And Hulk is not present in the meeting. That is true. Made me wonder if they forgot to draw Hulk in and then retroactively put that panel in. I don't know. But I find that seeing these types of strings is a very charismatic and bordering into kind of post modernism of sorts. And it's very exciting and idiosyncratic, vernacular. All these words I've been using, folk art-ish, outsider art-ish, in a way. It's just so much more exciting than its kind of industrialized counterparts. What else was there in this that I enjoyed? The story is beefing up, and they're putting in these throwaway lines like the Wile E. Coyote one I've said that make me think that these people confidently know how to tell a long form story. Um, and I understand why it's taken them so long. You look at something like Berserk, and while I read it, recently in a long run, in a short period of time, I would occasionally check to see. I was like, when was this released? And there's points in the story where I'm like, oh my God, they've been telling this we're 14 years into this story being told, and it feels like we're only just getting towards anything at all. Even though the parts before were obviously good, but Berserk, for example, takes I guess it took an entire decade to tell exposition Guts' character, just so you understand what's going on between Guts and his I actually can't remember the name off the top of my head, but of his, you know, counterpart. Um, and I just don't think we give this type of long form storytelling enough attention from an analytical level. We certainly do on a kind of fandom level, but I don't know. I'm liking what's being laid down so far. And there's some hilarious dated references in this. MySpace. I think they were poking fun at MySpace. I never used MySpace. I'm just a little bit too young. I do remember, people slightly older than me using it, but I never had it. And I guess I do. I've found music on there for sure, but I never had it personally. Nonetheless, funny jokes about MySpace and Justin Bieber being this guy everybody hates. People younger than me, I don't know if they remember that like Justin Bieber was this kind of like fanatical symbol of like horrible pop modernity. Uh, and I don't know if I ever fell into that camp, but I'm not really like a guy who's out here, uh, at least not when I was younger, like viciously consuming pop media. But it's funny that they kind of, um, this idea that if they put on they call him Justin Bieber, which is pretty funny. Um, but just they put on a Justin Bieber concert. that all the trolls will come, and this is very much a product of its time and a reference that maybe hasn't aged so well, but it's fun to have these reminders of these kind of uh, long erased cultural moments. And it made me think, current right now, Justin Bieber is in the midst of what many people online are calling some kind of mental health episode, that he's like down bad, whatever. And I simply don't see the case. He's been posting snippets of his songs, and they're certainly Playboy Cardi inspired rather than the kind of G-rated Chris Brown that he normally does. But I actually think I find it very exciting when people at that level of fame are willing to kind of take dangerous left turns. You don't see it too often. One of the more interesting ones recently was Camila Cabello with the Cardi featuring song. Although that song's not very good, it is an interesting left turn. Lil Yachty has done a couple releases like this. Again, neither of them particularly worked for me, but I appreciate the left turn. Kanye West, obviously the master of the left turn. Drake's House album, I thought was a good left turn. I like that record. Not that that music was particularly inaccessible. But that's all I'm saying. And then to tie it back to Tails Get Strolled, what's so exciting about vernacular art like this, where flagrantly not abiding by copyright laws. You can freely steal any character, and then they already have their semiotic resonance there, and then from there you can bend it and defy expectations, which he's done many times. Like with this Bugs Bunny thing is excellent, where it's like we know Bugs Bunny, but you've taken it and you've done the things that Warner Brothers is not entitled to do or refuses to do, and that's what's so exciting about this kind of art that's free of any sense of middleman or even free of any sense of kind of commercial desire. Although I do know, I think that this has reached a level of popularity where commerce is on the table. But nonetheless, um, yeah, the story has didn't move too much this in chapter two, but we're building. We're building to events that will, I'm sure, set the groundwork for what is to come. So I'll talk to you after chapter three. Thanks for watching.